Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Olamide Olaoba, your grad school advisor. Today I'll be talking to you about F1 visa interview tips for non-funded, partially funded, fully funded, and third country applicants. Just before I start, if you are yet to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please subscribe now and click the bell button. You will be notified when I release new videos. So let's get right into it. So I'll be discussing about these tips under the following outlines. First, I will introduce you to what F1 visa is, the types of applicants that apply for F1 visa, and what you should do before the interview day, and what you should do on the interview day. I will also be taking you through some common interview questions and how you should answer them. And one very important thing I will also be discussing about is how to demonstrate ties with your country, the proof of funds. And I will also be talking about what you should know as an applicant with dependents. And I will be giving some tips to the third country applicants. First, let's talk about F1 visa. According to USCIS, F1 visa is an academic visa that allows you to enter the United States as a full-time student at an accredited college, university, seminary, conservatory, academic high school, elementary school, or other academic institution, or in a language training program. So let's see the types of applicants that apply for F1 visa. The first applicant group is the non-funded applicant. Now, I have established that F1 visa is an academic visa. So oftentimes, as a grad student or an undergrad, if you are applying for visa, you may be applying as a non-funded applicant. And by a non-funded applicant, I do mean if you are not receiving any funding from the school you are applying to. So you then belong to the category of the non-funded applicants. And under this category, you can be a single applicant or you can be an applicant with dependents. So if you're an applicant with dependents, it therefore means that another individual depends on you, another individual depends on your admission, or better put, you have someone going with you to the United States. This may be your children or your wife or your husband, as the case may be. The second category of people is the partially funded applicants. These applicants receive partial funding from the school. This may be in form of a partial tuition waiver or 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 a partial tuition scholarship or a partial funding. So in the main, this type of applicant receives a partially funded offer from a particular university. Again, this type of applicant may be single or an applicant that has dependents. The third group of applicants are the fully funded applicants. This type of applicant has comprehensive funding package. This type of applicant receives funding from the school or scholarship from an external agency that covers the living expenses, tuition, insurance of the particular students in the United States. So specifically, the students may have tuition scholarship, funding that covers stipends, monthly stipends, which can be used to cover living expenses, and the student may also receive offer to cover the insurance, the health insurance policy. So overall, this type of student receive full funds or fully funded offer from a particular university. And again, this type of student may be a single applicant or an applicant with dependents. The fourth category of the applicant I'll be talking about is the third country applicants. The third country applicants are applicants that are present in another country applying for visa to the United States. So let me put it this way. A third country applicant is an applicant that is not present in his own country, but in another country. Now, in another country, this applicant is applying for US visa, F1 visa to come to another country. So you can see that there are three countries involved here. The applicant is a citizen of country A, the applicant is present in country B, and the applicant is applying for visa to study in country C, which is the United States. So that type of applicant is called a third country applicant. Regardless of this status, however, this applicant may be a single applicant or applicants with dependents. The applicants may or may not receive full funding. So these are the types of applicants that you would often find applying for a US F1 visa. I move. So let us talk about what you should do before the interview date. There are a lot of things you should do before the interview date, and one very crucial thing you want to do before the interview date is to prepare all your documents. You want to make sure that your documents are ready. You can make a list of the documents you expect to take along, and I will be running across some lists here. So, and this may also help you to prepare your documents. Again, let me emphasize that there are students that may need more than these documents or need one or more of these documents. So the number one thing I believe every applicant will need is the international passport. As an F1 visa applicant, you need your international passport. In some country, passport photograph is expected. Evidence of interview appointment date. If you've booked an appointment date, it is also expected that you take along with you the evidence that you actually have an appointment for that day. You need your admission letter. This is very important. You need your funding letter, especially if you have received funding from a particular university that you are going going to study. You also need your I-20. I cannot emphasize this more. You need your I-20. Your I-20 is very, very important in your application for visa, and this will contain your information, your academic information. So this is as important as any other point I have made earlier, or the list of other documents I'll be talking about, but you don't want to forget your I-20. Your service fee payment receipt. You want to ensure that you have confirmed that your service fee has been paid. You don't want to be among the applicant that wait until the last minute before they pay their service fee. You want to make sure that your service fee is paid and you allowed at least 3 business days before you go for interview. This is very important so that your service fee can be appropriately registered. You need a statement of account if applicable. A statement of account here is a statement of bank account from your sponsor. Say, for instance, you have not received a full funding from the university you have applied to, or that you receive offer from, or let's say you received a partial funding and you have a deficit. In order to cover for this deficit, or in order to show a proof of fund for your living expenses and tuition, you need a statement of account from a sponsor. You also need your visa application fee receipt. This is very applicable in some countries, and it is very important that you also take this along, even if it is not asked. If you have taken some standardized tests like the graduate record exam, the GMAT, TOEFL, and the IELTS, it is important that you go along with you to the embassy with your scorecard. So this is also very important for your interview. You also want to go with your study leave letter, especially if you are working in a particular organization and you have been granted a study leave, it is also very important that you go to your interview with your study leave letter. In fact, this is one of those things that will demonstrate your ties to your home country, as I will be discussing this better in the next slides. You also want to go with you want to go with your employment, you want to go with your employment letter because it is important as well. If you are employed and you have your employment letter, it is important to take with you your employment letter. This can be used to also demonstrate ties. I will also explain this in later slides. You want to go with your ID card for students that are currently enrolled as of the time they will be going for their interview, and of a fact, they hope that they will be done with their program before they travel to the United States. It is important that you go with your ID that you are currently enrolled. If you are working in an organization, it is important that you go with your ID. If if you belong to any community that is recognized, you can also go with your ID. All of these documents can be used to prove one thing or the other, either to demonstrate ties or to prove that you are sufficient, that you can adequately fund your studies abroad. Now, I have this caution: dedicate time to practice your response to expected questions. There are a lot of questions that you can anticipate, and there are some questions that are unexpectedly asked during F1 interviews. So, meanwhile, it is important that you have your own question, some of the expected questions you anticipate. You should try and practice your response to those questions. There are some questions that are very obvious. There are some questions that in most cases should be asked. You cannot escape some questions. So, and some of these questions we'll be treating them as we move on in this talk. So, let me reiterate again that you should dedicate time to practice your response before the day of your interview. No answers to every questions. No answer to every question. When you practice more, you would have mastered your response. I'm not saying you should cram your response, but master your response. You should know what you want to say at every point in time. Another thing is, don't listen to people that communicate fears. You know, a lot of things go on, especially when you are preparing for F1 interview. You would definitely receive advice from a lot of people that have done it before. Some of them may be communicating fear. I understand. Some of them may just try to tell you how difficult it can be, but it all depends on the experience of different people. There are some people that it was so easy for them, and there are some people that they have to do it a number of times before they were granted the visa. But regardless of who you are receiving the advice from, the category of the people you are receiving the advice from, I want you to make sure that you don't um, listen to people that communicate fear. Or if you are the type that can listen to people's experience and seed away the fear, then it is also something that I will advise you to do. But just to just to prevent the situation whereby you are already anticipating the negative, it is important to don't just listen to anyone. I can assure you that with proper practicing and confidence, you will definitely have your visa. Another point here is to prepare to remediate the inadequacies of your application materials. Now, if you look at the document that I have adumbrated here, deemed essential for your interview, there are situations, especially in your bid to demonstrate ties or demonstrate proof of funding, there may be some inadequacies. It is important that you appropriate these inadequacies before the interview date. You never can say questions can come from these inadequacies. Make sure you are well prepared, fully prepared for your interview. Master your response. Don't go to the interview and well, I wouldn't say you shouldn't think before you talk, but try as much as possible not to be asked any question unexpectedly. Amidst many practices, I am certain, I am sure that questions you will find on the interview day are questions you would have, mastered response to. And finally, on what you should do before the interview date, master the information on your DS-160. Important thing to take note of about DS-160, you don't want to take your DS-160 form to you, with you on the interview date. But then you can have your DS-160 printed out, master everything there, make sure the information on your DS-160 is very accurate to what you are thinking. Make sure make sure you are not prepared or you are not preparing to give out information that is contrary to the information you have given on your DS-160. For instance, if you have applied for US visa before and you've been denied, and you have clearly stated this on your DS-160, on that day, if the consular officer asks you the same question, you want to make sure you do. If the consular officer asks you whether or not you've been to the United States before, if you have indicated no, you also want to maintain what you've said. So it is important not to manage insincerity. Make sure you are sincere. You make sure you are sincere on your DS-160 and you are also sincere with your response. It is I would say it is all about what you say. And it all starts from your DS-160. It is just about what you say. So information that you do not reveal on your DS-160, definitely the consular officer will not know. And another thing I want to say here, especially for applicants that are doing their interview the second time, questions usually come whether or not the consular officer has access to your previous DS-160. So to be on the safe side, I would recommend that you should keep your DS-160 as consistent as possible, except if you have major changes on your DS-160. And if the major changes are justifiable, then you go ahead and change things. You want to keep consistent record so that you do not give a contrary response to questions that will be asked from you on the interview date. Let's talk about what you should do on the interview date. On the interview day, you want to have confidence. You want to be confident in the way you portray yourself, in the way you respond to questions. You don't want to panic. I just want you to imagine that it is all about what you say and it is just all about the moment. Imagine that if you panic, you may end up being denied. If you don't panic, you still may end up being denied. So why not just put on that compelling spectacle? I'm not saying you should specifically put on spectacle, but then you want to be confident in your presentation of fact. Be confident. When you are confident, it will definitely show, should I say, it will portray you as somebody presenting convincing response. Yeah, let me put it that way. So, importantly, be confident. Dress moderately. You don't want to dress too extravagantly. You don't want to dress down too much again. Just be moderate. And when I say moderate, I know it is relative. It is relative, but just be moderate. Let me put it that way. Just be moderate. And again, you don't want to be discouraged about what you hear or see on that day. On the interview day and on the location and at the consulate or I don't know if you'll be attending the consulate or the embassy. Regardless of where you'll be attending your interview, you will find a lot of people, and these people have different experience. They might have received advice from different people, and some of them had been denied before. Some of them have been granted visa before. They may just want to change their status. So you would have access to a lot of people. You must be very careful about what you hear and see. Again, the interview is like an open space. You can sometimes see people that are denied. Don't be discouraged. Even if everyone before you are denied, don't be discouraged. And that is why tips like this are very important. If you have prepared so well, prepared your response, you dress moderately, you are confident, and again, you are not discouraged by what you hear or see on that day, definitely you are prepared to get your interview rightly. You are prepared to have your visa approved. Again, go straight to the point with your answers. When questions are asked, go straight to the point. But then you want to make sure that you have the right answers to questions. Make sure you have the right answers to questions. Don't beat about the bush. Hit the nail on the target. Have the right answers to questions. Go straight to the point. There are sometimes the consular officer will cut you. Don't be discouraged. There are sometimes the consular officer will appear as though he or she is not listening to you while you talk. Don't be discouraged. Keep doing your thing. Keep talking. Keep giving the right answers to questions. Some of them are psychologists. So don't be disturbed. Don't be discouraged by the attention. Probably if the consular officer was giving you attention initially, is giving you attention initially, and you discover that he or she shifted her attention away from you while you are still talking, don't be discouraged. That is what I'm saying. Again, don't give information that is contrary to your DS 160. I think I have talked about this before and I am emphasizing it again. Don't give information that is contrary to your DS 160. Let's talk about some of the common interview questions and how to answer them. Common interview questions and how to answer them. Usually, a consular officer will ask you where you are headed. It may not be in this form, but this is the type of question you would often have when you get to the consular officer. Where are you going? What's what school in the US are you going? Or why are you going to the US? These are the questions that the consular officer will ask from you and you when you get to him or her. And you want to talk or give a response that talk about your degree, your program, your school, and your location. It is important. And this is an example. Look at this response. I am going to the United States to pursue a doctorate degree in mass communication at Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut. This is on point. This applicant is going to the US to pursue a doctorate degree, and the program is mass comm at Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut. So this is a typical response. Let's take a look at another interview question and how to answer them. Why did you apply to this university? Why did you apply to now? Amidst many university, the consular officer may be interested in why you have applied to this to a particular university. And another question you may find in this category, even when you have provided answer to why you have applied to a particular university, is why. I mean, how many university did you apply to? If you gave a list of the schools you've applied to, the consular officer may ask you how many schools gave you offer. Again, if you provided some list, the question again will be, why did you choose to attend this particular school? So you must make sure you have all your questions prepared and all your answers prepared. So have answers to questions. Sit down and prepare them. Practice and master your answers to every questions. So what you should say or what you can say, not in all cases. One very important thing is your interest. Even if you are not talking about anything, you want to talk about your interest. The interest you have in a particular school is important, or the interest you have in a particular research that is offered by a particular university, it is important. So it is always the fact that your interest aligns to the specializations in a particular school or the interest of a particular faculty in a particular university. Interest, it is very important. You may also want to talk about facilities, experienced personnel, or the environment. The environment of that university may be something that is appealing to you. Maybe you are an applicant that desire to study in a particular location in the US where the cost of living is low, or and if you are in that category, then you want to make sure that you know the cost of living of that location. Usually, you want to, if it is about low cost of living, you want to mention that it is lower, or it is lower than the national average. And so you have all the information online and you can always check. So it may also be some of those reputations of the school, maybe the nature index, like I have mentioned in my previous video. If you have not watched, you can watch on how to write a stellar SOP. So a lot of things can simulate your interest for a particular university. So let's look at a typical response um, crafted. So this is a response I read. The University of Missouri Research Reactor Center is the world most powerful and the United States sole source of radioisotopes used in nuclear medicine. This cutting-edge facility is highly resourceful to my research interest in radioimmunology. You know, yeah, when during interview sections, you may not be as this, fluent, or as though you are reading a particular letter or reading a particular sentence from a book. But then, if you have this type of response written down, you know what you want to say. For instance, you know that you will talk about the Missouri Research Reactor Center. You want to talk about what is peculiar about that university and how it applies to your program that you are going for. Again, you are doing so well. Okay. So I also mentioned here that financial support may be one of those reasons why you are applying to a particular university. For instance, if you discover that um, um, a particular university is going to offer a comprehensive support upon your acceptance, this may also be part of the reasons why you are applying to a particular school, although not the main reason. It should be um, just an addition to your interest. Your interest should be the first reason why you're applying to a particular school. Let's talk about another question. Why not study in your home country? You can also find this type of question. It may be paraphrased. You can have it as why the United States. A lot of times you can have questions coming to you. Why the United States in most cases? Or why not other countries, even if you want to study abroad? But basically, what we have here now is why not study in your home country? Okay. What you want to do is you want to talk about the uniqueness of your program, and that's it. Just the uniqueness of your program, especially if the uniqueness of your program differs from what you have in your country. Maybe there is something unique about your program in the school you have applied to, or in the academic system of the United States generally. This is where you have to talk about it. Please, in the real sense, there should be a rationale why you don't want to study in your home country. You want to study abroad. So, but I encourage you to talk about the uniqueness of your program. It is all about your program. It is all about your interest. It is all about your research. Let's see what we have here as an example. The molecular immunology and the radiopharmaceutical imaging techniques are routinely used in my proposed research. However, these state-of-the-art facilities are not available in my country. Therefore, in a bid to contribute to high-level research and develop lifelong collaborative relationship, I chose to undergo my doctoral studies outside or abroad. So you can see this is just a typical response. This applicant is talking about the uniqueness of his program, just the uniqueness of his program, tailored towards research, interest, facilities, and all of that. So all of these things are unique and it is not available in the applicant's country. So in a bid to contribute to high level research, the applicant have chosen to undergo his studies abroad. Yeah, wait a moment. I know you may be thinking whether or not you will have that much time. Yeah, that's a question you should think about. So, will you even have the time to talk this long? The simple answer is most time no, and sometimes yes. In fact, but most of the time, the consular officer will not allow you to talk for a very long time. Once you hit the nail on the target, once he receives or he is convinced, he or she is convinced about your response, he or she will cut in and the next question will be asked from you. So what I want you to do is, or let me say, my recommendation to you will be prepare all your response and be always prepared to give your full response at all time. So if the consular officer cuts in, even he or she interrupts you, it is okay. But in the real sense, you have prepared your response. So again, I want to maintain that most of the time you would have time to talk or give response to answers comprehensively, but be prepared to give answers appropriately. Another question you can have is your study plan. Oftentimes, the interviewer will ask you what your study plan is. So this is also part of the most common questions you will have on the during the F1 visa interview. You can talk about your courses, number of credits you'll be taking when you resume, or the total number of credits you are expected to take throughout your program. You can talk about major milestones in form of exam that must be reached before you finish your program. So these are part of those things that can be included in your study plan, or maybe major events that are important to your progress during your study. These are things you can talk about when giving response to this type of question. So let's take a look at this example. My program duration is 5 years. I will complete my courseworks, lab rotations, and qualifying exams within the first 2 years of the program. Just before the end of the third year, I will complete my comprehensive exam. Then I will continue my graduate assistance position and develop my thesis until the fifth year when I hope to defend my thesis. So this is a typical response. Um, the student talks about um, the duration of the program, giving timeline for completion of coursework, laboratory rotations, and qualifying exams, and comprehensive exam as well. And then the student talks about his position as a graduate assistant and the development of his thesis. So this is just a typical response, and you can always develop your own response and make sure major aspects of your study plans are covered. Let's talk about how to demonstrate ties with your home country. This is one of the very, very important aspects of your F1 interview. In fact, when ties are not well demonstrated, the consular officer at his own discretion can deny your visa. So you want to make sure that you demonstrate your ties. And the best way to do that is make sure you tie your response back to your country. That way you will not even be asked. If at every point you are asked a question, you find a way to tie your response back to your country. So it will always show that, or it will always be imagined or accepted as a show of ties, like you are demonstrating your ties. So let's take a look at some of those ways you can demonstrate your ties. You can demonstrate your ties through marriage, basically your family. So if you are married, you can demonstrate your ties. So if you are married, you want to have your marriage certificate as a proof. You want to have the photo album, especially if you are newly wedded, um, or maybe not for too long, or maybe birth certificate of your children. If all of these are present with you and you have an interview, if of course you would have indicated that on your DS-160. So if the consular officer asks you, you want to respond and still provide evidence. You want to respond and provide evidence. It's all about evidence. So if marriage is, or your if it is family, if family is one of those things you want to use to demonstrate ties, or major thing you want to use to demonstrate ties to your country, you want to make sure you go with evidence. And these documents are essential. Let's talk about employment. Employment is another way to demonstrate ties to your home country. In this case, you want to go with your letter of employment, you want to go with your pay slip. And again, if you have been offered or granted a study leave, you also want to go to the embassy with your study leave. And in your study leave, it must be stated clearly if, for instance, usually if you are granted study leave, most institution will grant you a pay leave. Like you'll be on leave, study leave, and yet your salary will still be paid. So if you can give this evidence, it shows that you will definitely come back to your country after your program. Business is also one of those things that you can use to demonstrate ties with your country. If you have your own business, you may want to present the business registration document. You want to present statements that are also showing your revenues, especially if you own a business. So depending on a particular on your country, there are ways to show business registration document. So whatever applies to you, you must, or let me say, I recommend that you go with your document to prove that you have a business that will be run. And again, one very important thing you want to convince the consular officer of is who takes care of your business when you are away. When you are abroad studying, who takes care of your uh, business? So you must make sure that all these are well fashioned out before you go for your interview. So especially if the major or one of those things you are hoping to demonstrate your ties with is the business you own. Let's talk about assets. Asset is also a big part of a way to demonstrate or ties to your country. So if you have financial assets, so you want to go with your statement of account that you have this asset in your account, and you know evidence of property ownership, maybe real estate. So you want to provide property deeds. It may be in form of insurance, or maybe property tax evidence that you are paying property tax, or maybe contracts that you signed when you close the deal as of the time you purchase the house. You know, these are the documents that fit in for assets. These are the documents you can use to show assets and to demonstrate ties with your country. Membership, if you also belong to um, some community that are well known and you hold is a position in this community, it is also very important that you provide evidence of that you belong to this community. One community is the student communities. A student ID will prove your membership, especially if you are a currently enrolled student. So if you are a currently enrolled student hoping to round up your program or conclude your program, graduate before you start your new program in the US, then you can show proof to the consular officer that you are a student. Or maybe you're a student that is going for exchange program. You also want to show your student ID to prove that you are only going for an exchange program. And upon the completion of your short program in the US, you are returning to complete your program in your country. So you need evidence that proves your status as a member of this reputable organization or community. Let's talk about the proof of funds. What you should know, documents that will help you to prove funds. You need a funding letter from an institution. If you have received full funding, partial funding from your university, you want to provide this letter to support your claim. Of a fact, most of this funding information will be available on your I-20, but still you want to go with your funding letter. Statement of account from a sponsor. So if you have an individual sponsor, you want to make sure that you go with a statement of account. And let me state that if you have the autonomy to choose between your siblings and any other person for proof of fund, it is important that you choose your sibling or your direct relative. Let me put it that way. Your direct relative, your father, your mother, your brother, your sister. These are people that you want to use to demonstrate uh, funding for sponsor. So again, if you have applied for loan, you want to provide a letter supporting your loan approval. And again, if you have a scholarship letter, either from your university or from an external agency, these are the kind of documents you want to prove to support your claim during your interview. Finally, if you also have a personal funding, again, these are type of the document you want to provide. Okay, so let's talk about the important note. I think I have started to talk about it, but again, I will say your sponsor can be your immediate family. I alluded to it when I was talking the other time, but now I want to talk about it comprehensively. Your sponsor can be your immediate family. In fact, I recommend that it should be your immediate family. Well, it is a question of whether or not they can. So, but if you have the opportunity to be sponsored by your family, your immediate family, I would recommend that you should be supported by them. Your immediate family includes your father, your mother, your siblings, your husband, and or your wife. So these are people that can support you. So if you are receiving sponsorship letter from another person who does not belong to your family, the question could be, what does the person stand to gain by sponsoring you? These are part of those things you have to figure out before you go to the embassy, especially if you are not funded, if you are not a fully funded student. Again, know some details about the job of your sponsor. Yes, let me emphasize this. You don't just want to go to the embassy with the statement of account that just shows that this person has the capacity to fund your education. But then, what is the job of this person? And in the same manner, you also want to make sure you understand the nature of the job. Make sure you can establish feasibility with the nature of the job and the financial capacity of your sponsor. And what do I mean here? You want to make sure that the nature of the job measure up with the financial capacity so that you will not be doubted. Make sure it measures up with the financial capacity, with the financial requirement of your tuition and living expenses. And again, you still must, you must, I mean, your sponsor must still have enough. So these are part of those things to consider when you are applying for um, F1 visa. So consider all of these during your interview. Let's talk about applicants with dependents. What you should know, you need an additional proof of fund for your dependents. So if you have applied and even when you have full funding, in the situation whereby the full funding does not cover your dependent, you will need to cover the deficit. You will need to prove to the consular officer how you would cover the deficit of your dependents. So this is very, very important. This is very, very important, and I encourage you to take this seriously. About ties, I want to talk about ties here. It becomes so somewhat difficult, not entirely difficult, but it may sometimes be difficult to demonstrate ties to your home country, especially if you are going with dependents. And if these dependents are not working in the home country and they just hope to go with you. So this will be very difficult if the only ties you can demonstrate with your country is a family ties. If ties you can demonstrate with your country is just family ties, and now you are going to the embassy with your family, with your wife, with your children, with and with the hope that you all are going together at the same time, it will be difficult. So if you are in that category, I encourage you to have another way to demonstrate ties. Have another way to demonstrate your ties with your country. It doesn't have to be family alone. You can still demonstrate ties with some other, like business, your assets. If you own property, these are part of those things that can still be used as a tie or as ties. But if you do not have an alternative, then it would be important that your dependents, say your husband, the adult dependent is working in the home country, and probably all your spouse needs is to have, to be able to visit you in the US anytime he or she wants. So in that case, it would make sense. And in that case, your spouse needs to demonstrate or provide evidence that he or she has a strong ties that will keep him or her in the home country while you are away. You know, these are some of the nuances that are associated. But once you identify all of this, you'll be able to navigate them very easily. So I am not saying it is not possible. I have quite a number of people that have been to the consulate, and husband and wife, including children, they were able to secure their visa. But I am letting you know all of this so that you can prepare adequately ahead of time. Regarding the job of your spouse, and I think I have mentioned that again. So about the enrollment of your kids. This could also be a way to demonstrate ties, like my kids are currently enrolled in so schools, and they won't be coming with me to the US, but on holidays they want to come around. These are part of those things you want to uh, use as a demonstration of ties, especially if you want your children to have visa, if you want to keep them as dependents when you go to apply for visa. But in a situation whereby it is just the wife that is going with a kid, it is it is reasonably appropriate. It is very appropriate. It is something that I would consider very easy because the husband is still in the home country working, and that is a way to demonstrate ties. So, overall, I want to say that if you want your family, your wife, your children to go with you, you either make sure you have a way to demonstrate your ties, or again, they are just coming to get a visa so that they can come for visiting sometimes. Let's talk about the third country applicant. The first thing I want to talk about is to again reiterate who a third country applicant is. The other time I made an illustration. A third country applicant is an applicant who is a citizen of country A but physically present in country B and applying for visa in country B to study in country C. That is a third country applicant. So what you should know, you should be able to prove residence. You should have a proof of residence, utility bills, any other thing. So proof that you are a legal temporary or permanent resident of the country you were present as of that time. In this case, country B, like I have made in my illustration. So, as a third country applicant, you must be able to prove residence. If you cannot, then it will be difficult for the consular officer to grant your visa. Your immigration status is very important. You want to make sure that you are not out of status in that country as of the time you go for your visa interview. It is very, very important. And of course, you want to have some documents that support your status. If you are a student in that country, you want to go with student ID that has not expired. You want to go, of course, you are with your passport. If your visa is still active, you also want to show your visa, you know, like I've mentioned, transcript. You also want to show your transcript if requested. I mean, I've seen a situation. Myself, I was a third country applicant during my time, and the part of those things that the consular officer requested was my transcript, and I had everything with me, and I presented all. So my ID and my transcript, and that is why I'm specifically including transcript here. So if you're a student in another country where you are not a citizen or a permanent resident, if you are just a temporary resident of that country and you're hoping to apply for US F1 visa in that same country, one of those things you can do or one of those documents you want to take along with you is your transcript.